keep your ears peeled. The Wilkow Majority.
Wrap things up, I'm going to put two issues together. What is now taking place in Hollywood and the social media hashtag #MeToo and the right to keep and bear arms. It's funny that the progressive Democrats have made gun rights like it's some white guy thing. No, the Second Amendment applies to all citizens, and you only lose your rights when you are convicted of a felony. Till that time, you have the Second Amendment and the right to keep and bear arms. Joining us in studio is Tim Schmidt, president of the United States Concealed Carry Association, USCCA.com. I think the truth is we've seen the biggest expansion in gun purchases has been women.
Exactly, Andrew. First of all, thanks for having me on the show.
No problem.
It's always a blast to be here. And you're exactly right. I mean, we're seeing so much demand by women to be able to transform themselves, to be that responsible citizen who can protect themselves. So we've actually launched our very own magazine for women, Concealed Carry Magazine for Women. That's how much the demand is.
It's amazing. I've tried to explain to so many progressive callers, look, what do you need a gun for? Why do you need this? Or why do you need that? And I always say it goes like this. Imagine a woman and a man arguing over gun control, and he says, what do you need a gun for? And she says, to keep someone from raping me. He says, well, I don't plan on raping you. Then you don't have to worry about my gun. It's a pretty simple thing. Yeah, I think that when you look at chivalry and the way we interact, we're hearing all of these horror stories. We had Kaya Jones on earlier in the program. I'm not saying that women should start promoting some Wild West, draw and shoot, ask questions later. But I think men would behave, the kind of men that need to behave better, would behave better if they thought they were dealing with a woman who's legally armed and trained.
Exactly. One of my favorite phrases is an armed society is a polite society. And the cool thing is that everyone doesn't have to be armed for society to get that deterrent effect. When the bad guys don't know who has a gun, they all behave a lot better. So having a responsibly armed citizenry is good for everyone.
And one step further on the women's rights issues, I mean, why it's been very unsuccessful, and it's because we know who controls the media and most of the feminist organizations. There are some feminists that agree to the point that gun rights are women's rights. That if you're talking about the way women are, if you're talking about physical disparity, if you're talking about, you're hearing all these women talking about how they've been assaulted, not just in Hollywood, the Me Too hashtag is everywhere.
Yeah.
There are also some women like, well, I took the step to learn how to defend myself, and I don't worry as much. That's not to say it's not magic, right? Owning a firearm is not magic. It doesn't mean you can walk through life, la 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 la, nothing bad can happen to me. But when you have the confidence that you have the ability to protect yourself in a dire situation, I think that makes a difference.
It totally does, and to your point, the firearm is the ultimate equalizer. I mean, truly levels the playing field. A firearm is the only tool that could allow a 100-pound woman a fighting chance against someone like you or I. And so that's why it's so important that women take that responsibility and go down that path and become that an empowered person who can actually defend themselves. And the cool thing is that we're seeing more and more of that every single day.
And I always say to progressive callers who don't like guns, look, it's not for everyone. It's not, and if it's not for you, that's fine. But you should not seek a government that's going to make it not right for everyone, because this nation has that as one of its founding principles. Founding, not some Johnny-come-lately idea like, hey, let's all own guns. This was something that was there from the beginning.
Yeah, but our founders understood that free people have the ability to defend themselves. It's a natural born right, and the Second Amendment simply affirms that, and so you're dead on with that.
So let's talk about some of the programs. I remember years ago, I took a class that I wish and I'm sure there are classes like it. I remember we had an instructor, and we had a former police officer and a lawyer, and they would run us through these situations. Yeah. One of them I remember was finding your babysitter dead, and the guy's jumping out the window. And how many of you would have shot him in the back? And he was like, basically like, you can't shoot someone in the back. It was real world situations where they played on the passion of the class. Like you just found someone dead in your house. The guy is jumping out the window with his back turned to you, right? The other one was you're in a convenience store, you're at the back getting some milk, and all of a sudden you hear that there's a stick up going on. What do you do, right? And it was a real eye opener to go through this. But the bottom line is that owning a gun does not make you a vigilante. It does not make you part of law enforcement. Nope. These aren't action movies where you're just going to swing into action. But it's amazing how the progressive anti-gunners portray anyone who owns a gun as potentially dangerous, unable to really protect themselves. I mean, you're just that thing's just going to go off at some point.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, it's completely untrue. I mean, people that go through the process of getting a concealed carry permit and going down that path of being that responsibly armed citizen, they are the safest people. They commit crimes at a significantly lower rate than just your standard average American. And it's a disservice to our country that they put out these lies that, people that carry guns, they're the problem, as opposed to they're actually the solution.
I read one. We want to talk about some of your programs. You want to hear a crazy statistic? Do you read Ballistic magazine?
I don't know.
I read Recoil and Ballistic. They had a crazy stat on suppressed weapons. I know it's a totally separate thing, but when we talk about semi-automatic concealed carry or the right to own an AR-15, there's always somebody on television screaming, right? Now the big debate is over suppressed weapons. According to FBI statistics from 1995 to 2005, how many people do you think were murdered with a suppressed weapon?
I'm going to guess almost 0.
2.
Oh, wow.
2. So when we hear some of these crazy statistics, it's shocking when you actually apply it to, the actual Department of Justice statistics. Yeah. You find that these oogity boogity scary things that news anchors put over their shoulder really aren't as active in taking life as you think they are.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. I just spent almost 45 minutes on the phone with a New York Times reporter trying to explain to her how suppressors actually worked, and it was amazing how difficult it was.
Well, I don't mean to cut you. They again, Hollywood. They think it takes a .50 caliber and makes it.
Exactly.
That's not what it does. No. It lowers the sound. The sound signature. But it doesn't make it literally silent. We call it a silencer or a suppressor, but it doesn't make it silent.
Right. Well, and that's correct. So many of these people they get their gun experiences.
Wait, what was it like talking to the New York Times? Well, you must be like the arch enemy. What was? Here you are, literally running an organization that promotes concealed carry, and you were probably talking to some frizzy haired woman from the Upper West Side of Manhattan who was falling out of her chair.
Well, I couldn't see her, but she did sound like she had frizzy hair.
They all do. The New York Times.
She was actually pretty kind. She was nice, and she really wanted to understand. And I think she was really surprised at the info I gave her. And one piece I threw at her was so AR-15 unsuppressed is 164 decibels. You suppress it down. Typical suppressor will suppress it to 146 decibels, which is still
loud.
That's painful to the ear. So,
do you think? And I often say this in the program that, especially with anti-gun sentiment, it's kind of natural to find that sentiment in New York City because the overwhelming majority. Now, have you ever been to the Beretta store on Park Avenue?
I have not.
You got to go check that out.
Okay.
That's they sell the coats with the patches and the $30,000 like skeet guns. But the majority of people in a place like New York City, they're not very outdoorsy just by the nature of where they live. There aren't many opportunities to go shoot here. I mean, there is the West Side gun range. They have a different relationship with firearms than, let's say, somebody who wears a barbecue gun in Texas, right?
Exactly.
You're raised with it. You're brought up with it. It's literally part of your culture. You dress one up before you go to a barbecue. I think they have a fear based on non-experience.
That's exactly what it is. And that's one of the things that at the USCCA I really focus on, which is, hey, education, training equals responsible gun ownership. And so many of these people, I can't tell you how many liberals I've actually taken to the range. Don't ask me why I do this, but
you should.
Yeah, and I can transform them in one afternoon just with a little knowledge, and 9 times out of 10, they turn into shooters because they've never experienced that, simply because they just don't know.
So what are some of the programs you guys are running now?
So we have an instructor program. We have over 2,000 certified USCCA instructors all across the country. They'll give you an unbelievable full-day experience of concealed carry, home defense safety, and that will help you to take that first step and really understand, okay, is this something that's right for me?
Now, how did you come to this? Did you wake up one day and go, you know, I want to work for an organization? Like, how did you become the Tim Schmidt that we're talking to?
Well, I started out by going to school to be an engineer, and mostly because
any military experience?
No, sir.
Oh,
no,
okay.
Just
right.
Engineer, and I did that because I wanted to sit behind a computer and not talk to other humans. And all of a sudden,
it's kind of what I do, except for the in-studio guests. But anyway,
my big epiphany, Andrew, was when I started having kids, and I realized that, you know what? I'm the first line.
But were you raised with guns in the house?
I was.
Okay.
I was. But for some reason, I was raised with guns. I was comfortable. My dad took me shooting. But here I was, 28 years old, and I didn't own a gun. It just didn't catch with me until that first kid was born. And I realized that, hey, I'm the first line of defense. I have to be able to figure out how to do this. So I kind of had my own self-defense awakening, went down that path, and really had a hard time learning, and I got nothing but pushback from the old school gun industry, and so that's why I started the association, started the magazine.
What do you mean pushback from the old school?
Well, here's a perfect example. Right. So here I was, 28 years old, went down to the gun store, the old school gun store, walked up to the case, pointed at one of the handguns.
Oh, it's really salty men working those. Really salty.
So this guy, I said, "Excuse me, sir, could you tell me about that? Or I'd like to look at that handgun." He looks at me and says, "What would a guy like you want with a gun like that?"
You mean a guy like me?
I'm not sure. I just want to learn. And so that was kind of the feeling I got, and so that's what started the whole organization. And so
So you made this your business. You were a 28-year-old engineer, and you just said, "I'm going to go start the concealed carry organization."
That's exactly what I did. Yep.
Wow. Well, look, it is true. The old school guns, and I shop and this all love to Frank, who runs the gun store where I go. He is so salty, and I have seen him work with female customers, and he's very good with them. But there is definitely that gun shop out there that most women just wouldn't think to go into, and then you go in, and it's not an environment that says, "Hey, ladies, why don't you learn more about this?" Yeah. And I'm glad that the industry is changing, because for the industry to be what it needs to be to fend off the type of big government pushback, we need women to be shooters, and we want women to be shooters.
We sure do. And you're right. The good news is that the industry is changing drastically, and it's much more acceptable, much more welcoming to females as well as younger people, which is what we need. We want people to grow up and be comfortable with firearms and understand their power and understand their value.
Yeah, when you think of that scene in Terminator when he goes into the gun shop and he's like, Uzi 9mm, and the guy's like a really salty guy is like, and he goes, plasma rifle, 40-watt range. That's what you see, pal. Like, that's so many, and I've laid that criticism out to gun shop owners, like, hey, you might have the core number of people that will come and buy the newfangled thing and buy ammo from you, but what you really want is to be part of the expansion of the industry, and that kind of means being customer friendly to people that might not be the traditional gun store guy, you know.
Yeah. When I started the USCCA, there were approximately 9 million people in the U.S. that had concealed carry permits. Now there's over 16 million. Now, obviously, we've got a long ways to go, but it's exciting that there's 6 million more people that have empowered themselves to be able to be that first line of defense for their family.
What sucks is that I live in New Jersey, and none of Gun Owners of America or NRA or I don't know if you guys would even see it as a value. It seems like it's going to be hard to get to bring the fight to New Jersey. And I would always say that if you could tell me the real difference between Florida and New Jersey as to why New Jersey can't have concealed carry, I'm all ears, but we got to end the program. And Hannity is up next. Tim Schmidt, president of the United States Concealed Carry Association, USConcealedcarry.com. Come back soon.
You got it, man. Thanks.
All right, Hannity's up next, Sirius XM Patriot.